So I feel it's pretty conservative. I would like to get feedback from the ISPs that are in the city first. I just worry that if I ask them, they're going to say no, because then that gives them more leeway to.
No, and that's fine. If we were to move this forward, which I think we should, that's what we're working towards, and the city council approves it, then it's not a request. It's an expectation. And if you're not providing that, we expect that you work towards providing that. And if this is what we need to be effective, because you're right, what happens every time there's a glitch in the economy, and I've watched this for many years, more and more people move away from the city centers. And more and more people want to work from home. And as that becomes more and more available, more people want to work from home. And we're going to see that increase exponentially after what we've done the last year, because many people have discovered they want to work from home, and many employers have discovered they want their employees to work at home. I have one employee that has no interest in ever coming back to work. And his productivity is great. He sits at home and he cranks out plans like you can't believe. He's happy, I'm happy. So, and I think we're going to see that change. So we have to have a product that allows our citizens to do that, as you explained earlier.
Excellent. Well, yeah, as long as we, are under the understanding that these are expectations and not, I do later in the plan, there are some things that I would like to see as ordinances. We'll get to those in just a second, but as for these definitions, that's all they are. ISP is an internet provider, right? An internet service provider. Broadband study is what we did. That's the feasibility study. And then IoT is a term that's not known to a lot of things, but this is the direction the internet service is going in, so I put it in here. I'd rather us be forward thinking than not. IoT, the easiest way to describe IoT is they are gadgets that live on a network that accomplish a specific task. It's a very broad brush, even in marketing terms. But we're talking about things like, not that I ever want to see Amazon drones flying in our city space, but those types of gadgets would be IoT. Any kind of traffic camera would be an IoT device. Any type of meter that would watch the sewer water levels, that would be an IoT device. This goes so far as to, some of these ISPs are starting to look at lawn mowing services by having, I don't know if you've seen them yet, but they are lawn mowers that are automated. There is no human being behind them. They use GPS and sensors on the thing to just mow a lawn without any kind of.
We were told that the technology is there and the patents are actually in place for a robot to come to your house, bring your groceries into your house and put them away and leave.
That would also be IoT.
Yeah.
So.
Where this is headed will be baffling.
Let me download this.
Many of us
locally.
Me, maybe I should say. Not let any robot in my house.
Okay. So into the meat. I divided this into 3 areas: how the residents use internet, how businesses use internet, and how public services use the internet, including the city. So objective 1 is to ensure choice of broadband access to residents. This is the stuff that we've been harping on for the last 3 years. Again, it's easy to write this in retrospect because we're about to fulfill most of this. Just a quick paragraph to explain what we're talking about and why we're talking about ensuring a choice of broadband access to residents. The outline is done the same way on each of the 3 sections. There's a little bit of background to just give some context to what we're trying to do. There's a list of goals and there's a list of strategies that we can take to implement those goals or to reach those goals. So I feel like these are pretty conservative, but I think that they are attainable for the next, I guess that's the other thing I should probably point out. Up on the purpose, I did put that, I don't know what the stipulation is on the general plan as far as how often we're supposed to be updating that. I did put on this that we should revisit this every 2 years or when we redo the general plan, whichever comes next, just because the technology will change frequently enough that I feel like this is something, and it's a small enough document that I don't think it's asking too much to look at it every 2 years. Okay, so back to the goals for residential. 90% of Far West homes have access to symmetrical broadband. That's 100 megabits up, 100 megabits down. We're gonna meet that goal as soon as these guys are done laying fiber. So the remaining 10% is our leeway, right? It's our ability to be flexible, because there are some areas like Westwood Village, that for various reasons, mostly because of the ownership, they do not have permission to dig there yet. So they might have fiber that runs all the way up to the corner of the development and then wireless straight from there, which will be pretty close. It'll still be wireless. It's not going to be fiber straight to the side of the house, but they'll still be able to get pretty decent speeds that way. And then there's going to be, I don't know if Country Place is getting fiber immediately. I think that's in their plans. Mountain View is currently under construction right now. Between Mia and everything in between Remuda and Mia and Mountain View, we are pretty darn close to 90%. I would also like to put in here that 90% of the residents have access to a minimum of 2 service providers, and that is also going to be fulfilled. Connext still has plans to open the network much like Utopia. So there will be additional providers like X-Mission, and there's a couple, Sumo Fibers also interested. So people are going to have probably 4 to 5 choices of companies to work with. They're all going to get the same basic speeds regardless. It's just, what if you don't like their customer service? What if you don't like how much they charge? You know, it just gives more options.
So how do they get from that orange line they're laying to in your house?
So the boxes that they're digging, that they're putting in the ground, that's where the junction is. So they'll have to dig or trench from that box to the side of your house. So this is all done in Remuda as far as I'm aware. So, you know,
they did a good job.
Yeah, so I was just at Ken's house yesterday and you can't even tell that anything was done.
So I noticed they're not doing anything now. They're just laying at least in our neighborhood, they're just laying the main line.
Yep.
And then do they come back and contact each owner? How does that go?
Yeah, so there've already been door hangers that have gone out for each of the companies, at least they're supposed to. You just have to call them and tell them that you want on the list, and then they just go down the neighborhood. So it's about 2 to 3 weeks behind when the conduit gets laid for Connext, and then I don't know where Optic Loop is right now, because they're yeah, I've had them in my yard for a little bit, and so they're, you know, just call it a month, right after you get the orange line buried in your yard, that you'll be able to actually then dig or trench the line to the side of your house.
How deep's that normally? The line from the box to the house?
How what?
Deep.
12 inches, I'm pretty sure.
It's 12. Okay, that deep. Okay, so it's not like the old telephone lines were 3 or 4 inches deep. It's deeper than that. Could you explain this third-party ownership? I didn't quite catch what you're getting at.
Third-party ownership was referring to Westwood that is owned by, isn't it somebody out of California? That's what I was referring to. So they're preventing us from digging fiber in there.
What you're saying is the person that is in the house can't make the decision
Correct.
to access it. Okay.
Correct.
Well, and like, unlike our streets, our sidewalk are a city easement. So unlike that, when you go into their property, you can't do the same as like ours. Yeah.
You could have 100% of the residents wanting it, but because of this third-party ownership, some simply can't have it.
Right.
But if they have a Wi-Fi that's fed by fiber, it's pretty fast.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
better than anything they've ever had.
it's gonna be good. It just won't be fiber to their homes. 'Cause
But that's why I do feel like 100% is a reasonable goal. I just don't think that it's a realistic goal. There's always gonna be something that happens where we can't get to somebody, right? So that's why I split it to 90-10, which is still,
No, that's fine. I
Good.
don't have any issue with that.
and then again, so that's just, the goals are just splitting between expectations for 90% of the city and the remaining 10. So the remaining 10%, we want to get at least 50 megabit symmetrical speed up or down, which again, for most folks is gonna be okay, at least for now. That number continually goes up. And there's some more references to that as we go along here. So 3 years ago, I showed a graphic from the FCC that showed that the last definition of broadband was 25 megabits. And that was back in 2015. They're already getting pelted with letters from senators and or representatives from Congress saying, hey, we need to up this to 100. So within the next year, that's going to be the actual FCC definition of broadband will be 100. So we should be squeaking in and being current right as that happens with this plan. Okay, so strategy, right? How do we do this? Point A is that we've already done it, right? We've spent the last 3 years trying to bring fiber internet to residents. We expect this project to be completed it should be done by the end of summer. I put the end of 2021 just to be safe. So any mention of franchise agreements in this plan is where things get iffy, okay? We have existing franchise agreements with CenturyLink, with Comcast that have been there for years. In fact, it's been 2 years since I've even looked at the Comcast franchise agreement. Have you looked at any of them recently? The fiber ones, okay. Do you know what kind of time period we have on those? Is it 10 years? Okay. Okay, so this is where Ryan would have to get involved, probably. The biggest thing is that with franchise agreements, we cannot give anybody a leg up over everyone else, right? We have to create an even playing field. There would be some ability. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that if we could create standards for ISPs to follow, then we would have more leverage when they come in and want to offer service as to what type of service we're going to get. So if we wrote into the franchise agreement to say that, the ISP must offer a minimum of 100 megabit symmetrical broadband speed, then they're held to that, right? And if their service levels drop below that, then we have some recourse. The problem is that these franchise agreements are already there. So we either have to look at if there's any possibility of modifying them, or somehow co-terming them to all end at the same time so that when they all end, we can all hold them to the same standard on the next franchise agreement.
Because this will change.
Right.
As you said, those numbers will increase.
Exactly.
I think there are provisions in those that allow for.
Great. So yeah, that's what I want to find out. But if we can do this, I'd strongly recommend it just because, let's just say that, over the next 10 years, broadband becomes 10 gigs, just as a far out number, okay? Because right now, 10 gigs for everyone is not feasible with the current technology. Actually, that's not quite true. It is. We're set for a while, okay? So we don't have to worry about this. But the point is that I don't ever want the city to get caught in a situation like we've been in where the existing ISPs do not have to offer any kind of, they don't have to innovate. They don't have to upgrade their networks because there's nothing holding them to it. So there's a couple more mentions of franchise agreements, and Ken, wasn't the city council talking about implementing franchise agreements on a broader level? Just these? Okay. Anyway, the thought as we go through this was that if an ISP comes in and holds to the standards that we've set in their franchise agreements and in the plan, that we would not charge them any franchise fees, but for ISPs that did not meet those standards and that continue to offer subpar service levels and things like that, that they could be subject to a franchise fee. And that would give them further incentive to innovate and upgrade their network. Now, that's the part that might not be feasible. I've heard, I don't know the exact law, but there might even be a federal law that prohibits you from charging franchise agreements to internet service providers in the first place. And that sinks.
Why don't you run these questions past Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a question about that one, how we would police it and, the fee structure and what would it be and how would you determine who's assessed a fee and not? I mean, it gets pretty muddy fast.
Well, let's get some firm legal advice on that.
Okay.
Part of it.
All right. Okay, we can skip C as well, and D. So anything that says franchise fees or franchise agreement, I'm going to run by Ryan. So point E here, this is something that I actually thought we did 2.5 years ago. It was one of 3 points that I had brought up to the city council when we were starting this process. Obviously, we've learned a lot since then, but for all new development, we should be requiring the developers to put, and I didn't put conduit because some of them did put conduit up in northern Remuda and it wasn't usable because they just literally threw pipe in the ground. They didn't connect any of it. It was filled with dirt. Sure. So we want to avoid that situation. We want to have a conduit that's buried at the very beginning of the development or before the development's finished. And in conjunction with calling all the ISPs and having them come out and put in their own lines. But this is something that it's just the same concept as putting conduit in your house for future upgrades, right? We don't know what's going to come down the technology pipeline in 10 or 20 years. So if we have a nice quality conduit that's already in the ground, after things get developed, we're not going to have to go through all this stuff again that we're currently going through and digging up everybody's yards.
So just a real quick thought, if there was conduit running, they wouldn't have all this whole mess that we're doing right now. If they would have laid it when they first did all these areas.
Yep.
It also means you have to say something about the conduit size.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's two issues.
Specific, yeah.
Right, so they're basically putting in bigger conduit than they need, and there's an understanding why.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it might not even be, from my understanding, and I am not, I haven't talked to a developer about this, but my understanding is that this is chump change to put this stuff in, right? So why not, right? And if we put the stipulation that it has to be, certain specifications so that we know it's going to be around in 10 years or whenever, and that it has to all be connected, right? And whatever.
It's easy. If you'll just get me the spec on what they're laying, we can write up the ordinance. That's not.
Okay.
Real question is, will you allow it in other trenches? Like Comcast comes and lays their lines in the power trenches, which as a developer makes that very easy because as soon as they're open, I call Comcast and they come lay them, and it doesn't impede construction whatsoever. So we would need, we need to know those things.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's a big no-no.
One of the issues is that there's two, right now, we do have an open trench policy and we do have on the form the numbers for the developers to call all of these different providers.
Yeah, and that's a very old form that has a lot of incorrect information on it. FYI.
But the point is,
Yeah, I can work on that.
even if we have a form or an up-to-date form,
Yeah.
there's no oversight to that. There's no, did you do this? They can say yes, and we'll say, okay, and it might not have ever been done. And we wouldn't know unless you're out there looking at the trenches.
This will be self-policing. We're there. I mean, we're to the point, if you don't have broadband internet, there's gonna be people frankly that go look for a lot somewhere else.
Right.
So the way this works then is the developer puts in the conduit irrespective of who's going to use it.
Right.
I mean, that's the understanding, right? You just, as part of the arrangement for the development, you will put in conduit.
Right, and you'll pass control of it to the city.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you get the spec on what's being laid, the issue here is that's a best guess. They don't know in 10 years whether they'll need more conduit space or less conduit space. And so this literally is a best guess. In 10 years, we may see what we're seeing today. In 10 years, we may see that they don't need a conduit anywhere near that big. We just don't know.
But I would still aim high. I'd aim
Right.
large.
And that's.
Because it's nothing cost wise. I mean.
That's what I'm saying is get the spec over what's being laid and let's put that down as, and then they know. And I suspect,
Buyers, utilities, so to speak, but there's construction.
oh, absolutely. I'm not,
The rest of it's future.
right, but they need to lay something at least of the same quality.
We need to check, cause a lot of the providers like do their own conduit. We don't put conduit in for Comcast. They do all of it themselves.
This would be in addition to whatever providers get out there, because it's a safety net is what it is.
Wow.
So I would still fully expect all of the ISPs to get out there and put their own conduits in. This is just something that the city has control over. If there is a need for it in the future, it's there, and we won't have to go through all of this headache that everybody's going through. It's a good headache, but it's a headache.
Yeah, I was upset when my freshly mowed lawn was spray painted yesterday. Really.
It's chalk paint.
Yeah, can you pull those? Is it
They
good?
came along, my neighbor had literally just taken the caution tape off her brand new driveway.
Is that the one that mayor was telling me about? Yeah.
And they came and painted yellow paint on her brand new driveway, which is inexcusable.
Well, the paint wears off after a little bit.
It does, but I mean, literally,
Chalk-based paint.
she had taken it down the night before. First time she had driven on the brand new driveway and they came in and painted yellow. She was not happy. Anyway, go ahead.
All right, so ordinance, that's point E. Point F, again, this is all wish list stuff, right? So the city, as a part of our website, we could at least have like a Google map that shows the availability of ISPs across the different areas of the city so that anybody looking at moving at Far West would know exactly what types of services are available where they're going to be. Any thoughts on that?
That's a good idea.
Great idea. Who would do the map?
Who's doing the website now? Is it Whitney?
I mean,
She's
that's
not
a
here.
realistic thing. I mean, somebody's got to draw the map.
There is also one that I think there's broadband number.
No, that one's sorely inaccurate, yeah.
Needs to be like a checklist too of someone that checks these yearly, because a lot of those provider contacts, I mean, they change all the time. So, and it's nothing is more frustrating than calling someone and be like, well, I'm not in that position anymore.
Honestly, seeing how often important documents get updated, even in the technology industry, I would expect that we would just look at that every 2 years when we look at this plan. and
Okay,
update
that's
it
fair.
that.
Yeah, let's do, that's perfect then.
So it's not something, honestly, it would probably take, I don't know, 30 minutes worth of work just to get it, and all that Whitney or whoever's in control of the site would have to do is put a link to it on the website, and that's it. Okay, so G is what we've already said. Far West should ensure an even playing field for all ISPs to compete for residential business. It's implied, it's understood, but I feel that it's important to put out there on the document for the ISPs to know that we're aware of, that we want them to compete on an even playing field. And then yearly is a very subjective, or opinionated term, right? But we could do a survey. Oops, sorry. No worries. yearly survey to, sorry, I hate hearing my own voice.
It didn't come up on, I was looking for your email and it didn't come up, so I figured I'd just jump into this.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, no worries. All right, so yearly survey to see how the Far West residents feel about the ISPs that are in the city. That's it.
So we're gonna run a citywide survey, as you know, tomorrow. It'll go out. It'll be up for 2 weeks. We might know more about how well that goes after that. So I would leave that as is until after that 2-week period.
Yeah, I think you could probably indicate that there will be periodic surveys rather than yearly.
Periodic is a good word.
Yearly just kind of ties your hands in ways that we probably won't follow, you know?
We could even just put as a part of the reevaluation of this plan, a survey should be created.
That's even better, probably.
Make a comment.
Please.
Sorry. When I read this, to me, it was a sales pitch, not an ordinance. Okay? To me, it sounded,
So this is a plan, not an ordinance.
that's what I wanted to make sure. That's why I asked the question. Because if it's a plan, then it's great.
Yes.
But if it's an ordinance, it doesn't read as an ordinance.
Yeah.
This is actually one of the plans in our general plan.
Yes. So it's an addendum.
We'll work on the issues of the plan that need to be placed in an ordinance, and you can solicit Brandon's help if you'd like, because I think you both speak that language. Ken might even be willing to help. But we do need to address the ordinance issues in a timely fashion as we go through this, because that needs to go in place to make this effective.
I apologize. I didn't understand what, I thought this was an ordinance.
No worries. Yeah, believe it or not, this is very direct compared to a lot of the other broadband plans that are out
When I
there.
read it, it's very good. But the whole time I was reading it, I kept getting sales pitch, sales pitch, sales pitch.
It's partially designed to be that way.
Which is okay, but that's what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. So
Okay, this section's gonna be very succinct, and this is where I need the most input because it's where we have the least amount of information. Commercial development, that via broadband. So using broadband as a tool to attract the types of businesses that we want in the city, to also cement the businesses that we have in the city that are also suffering from the same issues as the residents, right? I know most of the businesses, you know, Smith and Edwards, Peterson, probably a couple other big ones associated, they all have paid for direct lines to be run to their places of business with usually Comcast. I guess I won't get into that right now. Sorry, this is just commercial. So they have one provider, they are paying that provider whatever their agreement is, and that's what they have, and that's it. So I have spoken initially, it's been a couple of years to be honest, because it just boiled down to residential need as the project developed. But the few businesses that I spoke with were mostly on 2700 North on the east side of the freeway. They all have spotty internet service. They would like additional choices. Even that co-op section with Pleasant View, some of the businesses in there. I know the Larsons that do Larson Digital over there, they're paying over, it's either $600 or $800 a month for 50 megabit speeds. That's something that I think that you know, we could potentially alleviate. Again, those are the types of problems that businesses will have when they move into the city with the existing infrastructure. So again, if you look at, and I don't know what the business terms or the business plans are for these providers that we've got going into our homes now, but I guarantee you it's less than $600 a month, right? And their speeds will be 20 times faster. So this again is where I need some help. What do we want to do? I mean, the simple goals that I wrote down right here is that 100% of businesses have access to symmetrical commercial broadband. They have access to 1 gig speeds because that's what businesses need at a minimum to function.
So I personally like what you've done. And again, we're setting an expectation. So when they run this conduit down 2700 north and they run the fiber in the conduit, they know that there's an expectation there. And so, I don't know that the city, especially if the city's not willing to fund, it becomes a little iffy as to just how far we can push.
Right.
But setting an expectation from the city helps the businesses have the same expectation. So I think you're on the right path.
Okay.
Current and future businesses have to be getting a door after that.
Yep. And that's why the strategies are pretty vague, generic, I guess. So we should leverage the existing ISPs. Ken and I just had a conversation with Optic Loop yesterday. They're willing, right? We don't know the details yet, but at least out of their mouths, they've said, hey, we're willing to go serve the areas that need service, right? I'm sure Connects to do the same. We might be able to meet these needs very easily. It all just boils down to what the ISPs are willing to do. Point B, again, is something that depends on Ryan's input and what we can actually do with service level agreements and franchise fees and things like that. I suspect we'll end up taking that stuff out of the plan. Especially if there's that federal law that I was talking about, that sinks everything right there, so.
Could I make a quick editorial comment on the introductory to this section?
Absolutely.
And that is change entirely to primarily. So as far as commercial and manufacturing zone exist entirely along 2000 West Rulon White and 2000 North, 2700 North. They exist primarily along those, but they're certainly not.
Introductory paragraph, the background paragraph.
It's the very first paragraph.
Okay.
Just scratch entirely and put primarily, that makes it more accurate because we do have commercial zones in other places.
That's a good catch.
Okay. That takes care of the commercial section. Objective 3 is the city and public service adoption of broadband. This is us eating our own dog food, right? So city offices should be equipped like a business.
Is "are" the right word? That was the only thing I'd written down here.
Are? Oh,
City
sorry.
offices will be, or
Yeah, the goals are written as present tense. I can change the tense on all of them if you'd like, into shoulds instead of ours. It's just that's the goal, that city offices are equipped with.
right, and I understood that, but as a future goal, I wonder if we shouldn't write it in that tense.
Well, goal usually is future and not present. I mean, when you talk about goals, you're not usually recounting what you have, you're talking about the future.
Right.
So I think future tense is appropriate there.
Okay. Other than that, it looked fine to me.
Okay. City offices are equipped, again, it's easy to write these things in hindsight. City offices are equipped with up-to-date communications technology to make virtual attendance a good experience. We're there. do you know what we have right now? I know we have Comcast. For ISP service, for ISP?
Yeah, I think we have Comcast in this facility, Connects out of Smith Family Park.
Okay.
Meeting over to the Public Works, we have nothing in there.
Oh, but I just mean the offices, like the actual city itself.
Yeah, it's Comcast.
Do you know what speeds? Okay. Anyway, just thinking that, right now we have, a dozen people getting on the conference calls virtually. What if we have the room full, but virtually, right? That bandwidth's gonna get eaten up really fast. So just a plan to say, hey, city offices should be at the same speed as business, because.
And you're spot on. This isn't going away. I foresee us being back to regular meetings soon. us broadcasting our meetings, I believe is the new norm. So.
Okay, strategies, Far West, this is, again, a lot of this goes without saying, but it's not thought of. I thought it would be good to put it in the plan just to show people that we are also actively trying to do what's best for the city's broadband needs. So we should regularly assess the contracts that we use for internet service and evaluate if changing ISPs is beneficial for city employees prior to the expiration of an existing contract. Point B is noting that we recently upgraded all the equipment in here to meet goal B. And point C is, let's see here. The Far West Planning Commission should include in the revision of this plan a discussion to ensure the city's technological and communication needs are being met. I don't know. Do you think that needs to be in there?
No.
Okay. Expansion of public services that use broadband. This is basically our way of saying that we should ensure that the utilities needs are being met and to partner with them. There is a whole branch of technology, and this is where IoT comes into play. There's a whole line of technology that is not common stream, but it will be in the next 10 years. Education's a big one. I forgot to put Silver Ridge in here. I'll go back and do that. Making sure that their needs are being met and that they have multiple options for providers as well.
We have some other partners in the area that are key that probably should.
Yes, so if you know them, I'd like to list them.
Monta Vista and Weber Basin are both should be on that list.
Okay. Anything else you guys can think of?
The fire district should be on there too. Thank you, Ken. That's Weber Fire District. And we're
Okay.
down to about 10 minutes.
All right. Far West Planning Commission should, as a revision of this document, reach out to each. I do think this one's important because this just keeps us in communication with the needs of the broadband needs of each of these partners. So as a part of revising this document every 2 years, reach out to each partner and have a discussion regarding how they are using broadband, IoT, and ensure that the city stays up to date with the needs of those partners. Pretty straightforward. And then everything here under the appendix is just the last study that we did. So if you look at some of the plans from the other cities, North Ogden is particularly good at doing this, but they will put almost anything as an addendum into their general plan. I don't agree with some of the stuff, like they'll put the surveys, like the actual individual replies, they will put that as an addendum to their plans. I would just say that every 2 years when we do these re-ups on this plan, and if we ever do a new broadband study, that we just tack it on to the end here. So all I did was basically put a very abbreviated version of the final presentation that I gave to the city council and explain how we arrived at the data that we arrived at and put it on there. That's it.
So your intent would be include this in this plan, 2 years hence, this would disappear and be replaced by something.
I would like to leave it on there and just tack it on the end so that people can see our progress through the course of, I mean, I don't see any reason to, people probably.
You might,
Well, that'll be more clear in 2 years.
Right.
I could see you reducing this amount, including it as a
It would
smaller.
reduce the number of pages, yeah, but.
I mean, this whole thing may become moot in 2 years.
Right, yeah. But, so we can,
Not put the names of the companies in there. That's because it's a sales pitch. I don't care.
yeah, but I think it's important that people understand who we evaluated,
They need to know what's available.
right?
Sure, but there's other companies will be out there that may come in faster or better. Just started out.
That was the course of the study that was done. So there is some value in ensuring that our report of the study was complete and including that information. So,
If it was an ordinance, that would be a different story.
yes, it would.
We've actually had many other cities reach out to us going, how did you guys do this? Because I mean, it's amazing. We're so much further ahead than a lot of cities. It's pretty cool.
Like I say, I like what I read. But when I put it in ordinance context, it just,
Yeah. No, this is just to show that we have put effort into
done your due diligence.
providing the best information that we can and then making that information available to the residents so that they can see what was done. That's it.
Yeah.
Steve, I think you've done a fabulous job.
That's it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I think it's. I misunderstood. I thought we were writing an ordinance.
Gotcha.
Anything else on the broadband plan? We'll discuss and we can probably take some time in the regular meeting after looking at the agribusiness ordinance and the first application we received. We saw that there was some need to make some adjustments to that. As I explained to the city council, that's actually fairly common in writing both ordinance and law. There always seems to be some unintended consequences, things you just didn't see happening. I sent that out to everybody and then I've ran a copy and put it in front of you tonight so that you have a hard copy when we talk about this later on. I believe what I have done here, and it's written in legislative form, so anything that's crossed out obviously is crossed out and anything that is underlined is new. And then I highlighted it in red just for your convenience. So we can discuss this more as in our regular meeting as we consider a public hearing where this is a change to an ordinance, although it's really not a significant change and I think better outlines the intent of what we were going for. We still have to follow all the rules. So that's why that's on the agenda to set a public hearing. Yes, Steve?
Did you send this out in email at all?
I did a couple of weeks ago, I think.
Okay. I'll look for it.
So, and we don't, after the public hearing on it, we can also make adjustments. So that this doesn't have to be chiseled in stone tonight. But if you see anything else that looks like didn't really meet the intent of what we were going for, I think it's important. And there's also, and I pointed this out to the city council as well, there's some state law that governs this type of work as well. So we want to let somebody set up a fruit stand, frankly, and be able to do some of those things. The state might have got a little outrageous, 1,500 square foot fruit stand. I don't know how that happened. It was 600 feet. Now it's 1,500 feet. Strange and wonderful things that happen, but I think we're headed in the right line and I think we're acting in concert with what's intended in the law. So we can take a minute and discuss that now. If anybody has any more comments on that, or we can just move forward with that or discuss it in the meeting. So the other thing was on the agenda this evening for the work session was the mixed density residential ordinance. As you all know, the city council asked us to put out a survey relevant to that. The survey was written based on the discussion in our joint meeting with the city council. We've had a couple of comments and we will try to address those comments in before the survey goes out. If you have anything, more that you'd like to see in that survey, that you think will help give us the information that we need, please let me know. Before tomorrow, I'll be in here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to finalize that, and we'll send that out, and that'll be available for 2 weeks. Hopefully many people will take the opportunity to give us their insight. This is a challenging subject, and I don't have a crystal ball on this one, so we'll see how this all goes. Some feel very strongly both ways, so we'll see how that goes. Anything else for the work session?
Once we've took the survey, is there a way to go back into it? Cause I was trying to get back into it to reread through it and I couldn't get back in.
It should have just come to you Whitney sent it out as a survey.
I took the survey.
I don't
Then
think
I
you
wanted
get back
to
into
relook at it again afterwards to just
We can,
keep working on it and see.
I don't think on that one, when you submitted it.
Okay, so I took it and submitted, and then I wanted to just kind of look at what was there again.
well, if after this meeting, I think I have the original copy of it, but it's on a different computer.
Okay.
So I can get that to you if you want to look at that. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what so you're not going to get a perfect survey. You're not going to get perfect questions, but what we're looking for is kind of the overall guidance that the community would like to go. And then the goal here is that the city would take that guidance from the citizens, and then frankly, it's challenging because we have to look into the future somewhat, and we have to deal with what the state's gonna do in January, and they are going to do something. I mean, that's a given. So, it just becomes a challenging thing. If everybody wanted to vote, said we leave Far West exactly as it is today, I don't know that very many people would vote against that. The challenge is there is absolutely no way we can make that happen. There's actually all sorts of laws that say we can't make that happen. So, we have to accept the fact that Far West is going to grow and that densities are going to increase. How do we want to see that in 20 years from now? That is a tough thing to do. So that's what we're after.
After the meeting, could we maybe give some comments about this survey?
Yes, as long as there's not more than 3 of us together. Once the meeting's ended, you can send me stuff individually, or 2 of you can come talk to me, but we can't have a meeting after the meeting. That's against the law.
Can we talk about it in like the assignments or something?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that'd be fine.
something during the meeting.
Darren, are you up to saying a prayer for us? Brandon, will you lead us in the pledge? All righty, it is 7:01. I apologize for being late. Call to order the meeting of the Far West City Planning Commission. It is May 13th at 7:01. We'll begin our meeting by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Brandon, and then Darren will give us all the prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father in heaven, we're grateful to be here at this planning commission meeting this evening. It's a pleasure to be with us to make actions and decisions. We're grateful for this community. Pray that will bless it and the citizens of this community. And we say this in the name of Jesus.
Amen. Thank you, both. Our first item on the agenda is the report from the city council. Mr. Fippen.
Yes, thank you. So my report is, we met last week, May 6th. We first had a joint work session between Planning Commission and City Council. I believe pretty much everybody was in attendance. I'm not going to go through the details because it would take just as long as the meeting did, and we'll be going over it I'm sure some more, so I encourage you to read the minutes carefully of what is there to remind ourselves of what happened. We then went into the regular meeting. Of course, we did opening ceremonies. There were no public comments during that part. We had our report from the Planning Commission. We then, into business items, we approved 2 home businesses, one for cast iron fusion and the other one for iron ox. They were reminded about how residential businesses should keep in mind they're residential and not anything else. We then moved on. We approved those, by the way. We also approved, per your recommendation, the modified site plan for Knight Building. That was that parking structure with solar panels on top. I think you guys remember that. We then set a series of public hearings. Let's see, public hearing for May 20th on a vacating a public easement. So that will be coming up. We then, Cody Carden, our financial advisor, went over the tentative 21-22 budget in quite detail. We went through it and we approved the tentative budget. I encourage you to attend when we go over these things again, because the next thing we did was here's where we set a bunch of public hearings for June 17th for the consideration of a communications license tax for energy sales and telecommunications. We also did one for adjusting the 2021 budget and approval of the final 21-22 budget. So those 3 public hearings will be on June 17th. We then awarded a bid for the riprap of the western drain out there on 4000 North. We've been working down the drain to clean that up and riprap it with the funds that we have for that. We had a good bid and we went with it. And it's someone we've worked with before and they do a good job. And they were quite a bit lower than some of the other ones, including the engineer's estimate, which is always a good thing. We then, on consent items, we approved the minutes. We approved the bills. We discussed what was going on in Smith Family Park and also some other things going on with pickleball courts and whatnot. Reported on our assignments, and then we adjourned. Be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Any questions for Mr. Phippen? Ken, thank you very much for your report.
Welcome.
Item 3B, open public hearing to consider the request of a conditional use permit for a 2,700 square foot accessory building for Michael and Amanda Hodson located at 1842 North, 2300 West. Is there a motion?
Should we open the public hearing?
Motion by Geneva to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. We are now in a public hearing. Is Mr. or Mrs. Hodson online?
Yes.
Tell us about your building.
It's just a metal accessory building, more for storage in a shop. Currently don't have a garage. Yeah, about it.
Can any comment from the public? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we close the public.
Motion by Lou to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Geneva. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. So, Mr. Hodson, is your house complete?
Complete.
Where are you in the building of your house?
I'm in the bedroom.
Okay.
Yes, it's complete. It was built in the 50s.
Okay, I had the wrong property in mind. Oh, I know which property yours is. I'm sorry, I got you confused with another property.
Yes, the old Davison property.
Yes, it is. I apologize. I'm looking for another motion.
Well, I think that he complies with all the requirements and I move that we approve.
Motion by Lou to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg for the discussion to the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Congratulations, Scott, and I won't confuse you with anybody else ever again.
Hey, no problem. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So Scott, that's a good point. The next city council meeting will be in person. So if you would plan on being here to address the city council, that would be well.
Okay, when is that?
That's next Thursday. No, yes, next Thursday. Same 7 o'clock.
All right, thank you.
And you'll need to call tomorrow morning and make sure you're on that agenda.
Okay.
Good. Okay, next item on the agenda, recommendation to the city council for approval of the modified site plan of home propane located at 373 North Higley Road. Craig, are you online with us tonight?
I am here.
Tell us a little bit about what's different tonight than the first time you submitted.
Okay, so the first time we submitted, we had a setback issue with the corner of the building and the large propane tank. So we modified the building to move the front of the building back to the north about 4 feet and expand it from 50 feet to approximately 60 feet. And that required Justin Cheever's approval from the state fire marshal. And we got that approval that we've submitted. And then we also needed to get the Weber District approval on the diesel tank, which needs to be 25 feet from the property, 50 feet from the propane tanks, and 10 feet from the building. And so we've got that approval in our package as well as another sketch of roughly what the building would look like with the new dimensions. So, I mean, it went from about 1,700 square feet, 1,725 to now, I think, close to 1,800 square feet.
Okay. You understand that if this is approved, Nate will measure those distances when he comes out for your inspections, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move that we recommend to the city council approval of a modified site plan for home propane located at 3730 North Higley Road.
Motion by Steve for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lou. Further discussion to the motion.
Mr. Chair, I do notice that they're putting on floodlights onto this. We want to make sure that they shine down and don't become obtrusive to the neighbors.
Okay. So, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, very good. You'll take care of that?
I will.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item F on the agenda is set a public hearing for May 27th, 2021 to consider amending the agribusiness ordinance. We discussed that briefly in our work session. Is there further discussion on that? And that can be a working document right up to the point it's submitted to the city council and based on any comment we get publicly. So is there anything you'd like to do with that document this evening? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I motion we set a public hearing for May 27th, 2021 to consider amending the agribusiness ordinance.
Motion by Geneva to set a public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our April 22nd meeting. Is there a motion?
I
I recommend we approve the minutes of the meeting of April 22nd, 2021.
Greg, is there a second?
A second.
Second by Geneva. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is report on assignments. Greg.
Nothing at this time.
Brandon? Darren? Steve? Lou?
Well, since I and the rest of the planning commission were given the responsibility of viewing this survey, I guess I'll assume that's part of my responsibility and make a couple of comments.
Excellent. Let's hear your comments.
I think I've made this recommendation. I think Darren may have been the other one. Surveys provide a lot more information if you know the reason why they say yes or no. I've done some work in surveys and I realize you don't want this to be a 30-page document, but I think it would be informative in some of these cases to know why they're saying yes or no. And it could range everything from simply misinformation, misunderstanding, to they truly don't like the idea. And we'll never know without a comment. So that would be something I think would enhance the survey. The other one is on the question that asks about being proactive. The way it is currently worded, I'm afraid they're going to react more to the fact that townhouses is mentioned in that question than you're asking them whether or not they think we should be proactive. And so I think you're going to get mostly no's, and I wonder how many of those no's really are related to being proactive. So I would suggest that we could reword it, at least to suggest that the townhouses may be a possibility, but not that they will happen, or perhaps not even mention townhouses in it in the first place. Just simply mention options to increase density and leave that very volatile term townhouse out of the question. So.
And I
think they'll approve proactivity. I'm optimistic about that.
So, and I wrote that particular question, and here's the challenge: is an increase in density that would include something like townhouses is coming at us. And the challenge is there is no crystal ball. I can't say 100% that's going to come out of the 2022 legislative session, and I can't say it's not. I can't say that they won't come up with a number that's strictly a density number where it says you're going to have, you know, a certain amount of your available property with 8 units per acre. I just don't know.
That can also be patio homes and stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
And there are other products on you know, relatively small lots. And so it just becomes challenging as to how to word this, because I don't want to misguide the public by not saying townhouses. That being said, Lou is absolutely right. That is an inflammatory word in Far West Utah.
Big difference. Even may is dangerous enough, but this says will. And you know, if you read the statement, it says, well, I can read it to you. Should Far West proactively address the housing crisis, which will include allowing patio homes, attached residential, and townhouses?
So should we get rid of the word proactive and say aggressively?
That one's a scary word.
I like proactive. Yeah, aggressively.
I think proactive is a nice word.
Yeah, it's a nice word.
It is, and I think the citizens want us to be proactive.
Right.
So it's kind of a loaded question, and it was not intended that way at all.
Well, what if you put which, at least soften it and say it may or could include, at least you got some wiggle room. When you say it will, that's a mandate. And so they're saying yes or no to townhouses.
And that's right. And that's a good concern. And that is not the intent. There are lots of products out there. I had someone comment to me that these are the starter homes of the future. And I told them when I was a boy, the term starter home didn't exist. And so they are right. Things change. But I will work on softening that. We have an edict from the mayor to put this out tomorrow. And so, we won't have time to get approval from everybody, but I will soften the language.
Well, and please understand, I'm not being critical. I think this does a good job. I just saw an opportunity for more information in the comments and maybe an avoidance of a red flag in the other case.
Any other comments on the survey?
Mr. Chair, we should all realize that townhomes are a distinct possibility because of the fact that the younger folks don't want to take care of yards. They want to be free, no maintenance, no requirements, come in, put their key in the door, go in their house and be done, walk out of their house and go on vacation.
I understand, I'm not arguing the inevitability of townhouses. I just don't want proactivity to be completely attached to townhouses. I mean, there are proactive options that do not include townhouses.
I agree, Lou, I do agree with you, but I just want that to be, I mean, the legislature can come back and say, you shall do, which they tend to do. So just something to be aware of. That's all. I'm just.
This is challenging, and as I pointed out, I believe in our joint meeting, we've been told by the league that this is coming. And one legislator, they did not give us the name, said his intention is to be rougher on cities. They want to place the burden on cities. So I don't know where this is going to come out. And as we've discussed before, it would be nice if we had a product that we could, testify that there are cities that are being proactive and we're doing this, and this, and we can fix our own problems and we don't need your help. It obviously worded much better than that. But if we don't do anything, they will do it for us.
Well, and I understand that, but it just seems to me there is an option of saying, we're going to be proactive, we're going to increase density, we're going to allow patio homes. And then they may nudge us some more and we may modify the ordinance in compliance with their request to include townhomes. I mean, it gets at a kind of a sequential event rather than an all or nothing thing.
I think Lou's point is very well taken. Proactive is a very good word.
Proactive is a great word.
Yeah, and then to put the all-encompassing evil term townhouse in the same sentence causes some problems. And so I'll work on that in the morning and we'll see what we can do. Are there other comments on the survey?
Just another thought. I wrote this, but I only replied, not reply all, but I think there should be like an excerpt at the first or a paragraph just explaining just a tiny bit what this survey is about, because I took it and I've been coming now to the meetings, but if we're gonna give it out to the public, they need to know kind of what's going on before they start taking a survey or else.
Okay.
I don't think
Good idea.
they'll have enough information to make educated
Right.
decisions on
Well,
what.
that's a great, and so I'm sure we will have some limitations based on the product. I've never used the particular product that we're going to use for this. And so as best as possible with the product, I will add these things in.
How will this be distributed?
My question, how is this getting out?
So it will go out, so I did a pre-announcement of this a week ago on the city Facebook page that this is coming. So many people who are concerned, who've been following us, know this is coming. And we will put it out in every way that the city has the availability to do. And then people will have to choose. This is always challenging because if you get, 10% of the city respond, that's not even, statistically significant yet. And so hopefully there'll be some word of mouth. That's one of the reasons we're leaving it up for 2 weeks. Is I hope there is some word of mouth. And
Council should announce it in their meeting.
I'm sure
Does
that,
it sync with the Bonavista bill? I know a lot of people do it electronically, but I mean, is there a way to connect it to that?
Put it in the newsletter,
To our newsletter?
put it in the newsletter.
So it won't be.
I'm still concerned about the proportion that we actually sample.
Well, and
I'm
again,
shocked to see how many people do get onto it. I think with whatever we posted on, there needs to be, if we can't do like an explanation when you get into the survey, I think there needs to, oh, okay. Or then attach some information, like if you're gonna post it on Facebook, attach the ordinance information and then the link to the survey.
so we will, we probably won't attach the actual ordinance because we don't.
Information.
Right, this, yeah, so we'll try to make it clearer what this is all about and why it's even being considered. Those are great points. I have a tendency to believe everybody knows everything I know, and sometimes that's.
Another quick thought is, I know this is like pigeonholing, but if they knew areas where it was kind of being considered, I know that's a hard part, but if it's not like in your backyard, remember the NIMBY?
Yeah.
If it's not in your backyard, people might have a different opinion of how they feel about it. If it's gonna go in an area that's closer to industrial or, you know.
I think that's with the questions in there, I think they were diverse enough where it said, you know,
Help it.
what acreage did you see? If there was a 10-acre, you know, piece, would you be okay? So I think they can kind of get the thing that it could be a bunch of different.
I agree.
They get the idea that we're talking about new developments and not existing developments. Does that come through well enough in this? Because that's a good point.
I will,
Well, that's gonna be the
It
question.
does, because we've been talking about it, but they may not be thinking about it that way.
What do you consider new development? Because say I own 5 acres and now or I own 10 acres that's got a couple, maybe a house on it, and now all of a sudden it's gonna become new development.
Well, when they look at that 10 acres, that opens up
Quite a few
a
pieces.
lot of proximity issues that weren't there with 75.
Right.
and go ahead, Steve.
When you're done, it was gonna be a change of subject.
I'm just not sure what's going to come at us. I wish truly I had a crystal ball so that we could measure the intent of the legislature and then mold this before. We don't have that. We're not going to have that. And so we're going to have to take the best shot at this we can.
Yeah, this will be a good start.
I think so. I think we're headed in the right direction and we have one that wants to consider using the existing ordinance. I'm not sure. I've got to contact the developer and make sure he's read it because it gets into that affordable, or excuse me, not affordable, but moderate income housing ordinance that we passed that dictates the size of the home they can build. And I'm not sure they understand that. So I will contact them tomorrow also and make sure if they don't want to wait and they want to go down the road that we already have available, there's some fairly stringent restrictions to doing that. Steve.
So this is more of a quality of life comment for the survey itself, but I'm assuming what's going to happen is we'll put out the survey and then that data will get exported as a spreadsheet when we actually look at it. Right now, the way that it's set up, you have name and address is one text field. That will make it a nightmare to dedupe the whole thing to get rid of duplicates. You'll get, coming from someone that's just recently done 2 or 3 surveys in the city, you'll get up to 10% duplicate entries. People will just go on there and they'll do it again, and then they'll forget a month later, and then they'll do it again. I recommend that you do one text field as a first name, one text field as a last name, and one text field for an address, and that will make it easier to get rid of those duplicates when you actually get the data back.
That's what I was just thinking.
It's good.
You talked about and we had discussed the size restriction for a house. Educate me a little bit. My concept of a patio home may be very different from somebody else. I look at a patio home as a small house. Am I way in the clouds on that? Or-
It's changed.
Okay, which is the reason for my question.
Because a patio home used to be the same thing, like 1,600 to 1,800 square feet. But now a lot of people are doing patio homes that are 2,200 square feet with 3-car garages.
Well, then is that moderate income housing?
Well, no,
I mean, where,
I mean,
So again, the one developer that's going down this road, I don't think has read the ordinance, because
patio homes come more from having no stairs, no incline, something that you could live on one level
okay.
that's what
is a way to look at it, not necessarily square footage.
Built on a patio.
and they are not, right now they are, well, I can tell you the one by us, which needs to be remodeled and painted and new carpet and probably a new kitchen. And I can't remember the square, anyway, it's listed for $430,000.
Yeah, they're not cheap. It's not necessarily even a moderate income thing. It's just a main level living.
So the way we've written it in our ordinance, if you're going to take the exception to use a smaller lot, you have to build a more affordable home. Because we limit square footage in that ordinance. And so, anyway, that's kind of a whole nother issue. And depending on what the state does, we may pull all that out of our ordinance anyway. So anyway, anything else on the survey itself that we can massage? Okay, I'll work on this in the morning. We'll get this put out, tomorrow. Geneva, did you have a report on silence?
I did not.
Okay, and neither do I. Is there any public comment? This would be comment from the public, on items not on the agenda. Anybody online?
Chairman, this is Craig Dunkley. I'm sorry I have to go back to my item, but is my next step to meet with the city council next week?
Yes.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
In person.
Right, it's in person, so you'll need to be here, Craig.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Okay, now back to public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment out in cyber world? Oh, we're making him wait. We have one comment from a person in the room.
Yes,
Citizen Can.
yes, thank you. I'm going to take my 2 minutes. And this is, none of this was on the agenda. It might drift into some of it a little bit, but I just came back from the deep dive into things that the legislature is doing to us. And I would like to at least bump over it real quick and give some recommendations. HB 82 is something that we do need to address, that does address some of these concerns that we have. Another thing that they shared that you guys care a lot about, and I would actually like to see it as possibly an agenda item, and that is about HB 409, which has to do with training and some of the other things in HB 409. It has to do with development agreements, lot lines, and all sorts of things that you folks are very interested in. They're also encouraging a lot. They have updated their Land Use Academy website. So on that Land Use Academy website, they have some of these trainings that you need, because you're now required to have 4 hours per year starting May 5th last week by the end of this year. They actually made it so that new members cannot vote on anything until they have at least that first hour of training.
Actually, and you guys don't need to worry about that because you were in your seats before
Before the
law
5th?
took effect.
Okay. But they were close.
Right.
But that's a new rule, but there's a lot of this that can be done online, and I hope that, that all of that gets addressed, because a lot of this is very pertinent to all of the discussions you've been having.
So
And it was,
anything you do land use, if you go to anything code related, you'll want to just note that you had those hours.
1 hour is actually satisfied by the full,
Right.
by attending 12 planning commission meetings in a year, you will satisfy one of the 4 hours. So that would be my comments. I would encourage you to go out and look at those bills and read them, because they really do apply to a lot of what we were just talking about. And especially HB 82, I think that's something we really need to get on, because there's certain things that are effective now, but there's certain things we have to do by October 1st. And that's the end of my comments. I think that was less than 2 minutes.
So 82 allows people to create an accessory dwelling in their home, essentially basement apartments. And there are some requirements that come with that. 409, we need to rewrite our development standard because that impacts roads. And has the training hours that we'll need to do. And then 109, and I can't remember what's in 109, but I'll look again and tell you. Ken, thank you. I appreciate that. All righty. Anything else? Go to the order, go to the body. I'll entertain a final motion.
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
Steve, second by Greg. Further discussion to the motion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Thank you so much. I need to speak with Darren and Brandon just briefly, if I may.